Hello everyone, it's Mithu Raman here. Thank you once again for taking the time to spend a few minutes with me. And for those of you who've asked, yes, thank you. I had a very nice time in London. Got to spend a few days with the family, and it was a very pleasant journey. And it's actually, for those of you watching today, August 2017, I'd like to share a little bit about my journey, as it were, on how I got to where I am now. For those of you who don't know, I split my work time between being an aesthetic doctor in South Wales and in London. I'm a freelance GP in South Wales, and I also am a landlord. And I enjoy all of those things very much in the level that I do them. But a few years ago, when I was a full-time GP, I wasn't managing my time very well, to be honest. I tended to put too much pressure on myself for my work. I was a bit of what you might refer to as a perfectionist. Now, some of you will be familiar with this. You know the old adage, if you want something done properly, you got to do it yourself. It's very much bandied around, just that feeling that it'll only get done right if you do it yourself. And I very much felt like that, so I would generally take it upon myself to do all of it as much as I could myself. Now, why? Because you get the feeling that only then will it be done properly. Here's the problem, of course: the more you try and do, the less stuff gets done properly. And that's when small mistakes start to creep in, and that's exactly what happened to me. I started making small mistakes, which then would escalate up into bigger complaints. And initially you try and deal with this by doing things like, okay, I'm going to have time to do all the things I need to do, so I'm going to spend more time at work. So I did that, which meant, of course, then I had to spend less time with my family, with my friends, doing the hobbies that I liked, even cutting out looking after my own physical health. So that suffered as well. And of course, my family noticed this because I was starting to get mood swings. I started losing sleep. That was one of the key things that I noticed that was trouble. The staff noticed, because I was getting snappy at them, to the point where they would just simply come in, just dump the work on my desk and rush off because they knew they wouldn't want me biting their head off, with good reason. Now, these are things that are clearly on the path to burnout. And here's the thing: I didn't recognise it at the time. And most GPs don't recognise it. Most GPs, most doctors who've been through burnout, they can quite candidly look back and say that at the time they were aware of the symptoms, but they didn't recognise that that's where it was going. And you might know about this. You may well have had a few of those symptoms that I've described. And I ran a poll recently talking about sort of how you manage your health and things, and of the 100 or so respondents, only one respondent said that they would go and see their GP. Now, that's interesting. Now, there's various reasons why that could be the case, but let's go on the assumption that we all work on the assumption of, remember, physician, heal thyself. So you shouldn't have to go and seek the help of another doctor or another professional, because we should be able to do this ourselves. We are doctors. We should know anything about how to manage our health, right? So the question is that if you did recognize that these symptoms were developing yourself, would you do anything about it? Certainly, I didn't until things had got quite out of hand. I'd ended up making too many mistakes because I was basically struggling, and I didn't know how to deal with it properly. And when I left my full-time practice and started becoming a locum, a freelance GP, I kind of thought, that would solve all the problems, and it solved a couple of the problems. But until quite some time later, and after seeking help about it, and realizing that I had to change my mentality about how I work. That was really the turning point for me. That was my opportunity to come back from a situation of burnout. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to practice at all. And it does happen. And when you seek help on these things, then you start to realize not only how badly you've been struggling, but also how long it had been going on for without you really realizing it. There's some interesting articles also about how male doctors and female doctors experience burnout in quite different ways. I'll post a link to it down below, but just to summarize, basically for women doctors, you go through three stages. There's the emotional exhaustion, followed by persistent doubt on whether you can do the job effectively, leading to are you even capable or worthy of being a doctor, which then leads to poor performance and burnout. Now for men it's different. For men, it's the cynicism and the depersonalization that comes first. Almost invariably what happens, resentment kicks in, and the first thing that happens is blaming the patients. I ran another poll a few weeks ago, and it started off with, complete the sentence, my job would be so much better if I had ... And overwhelmingly the responses that came back were along the lines of, this job would be so much better if I didn't have the patients to deal with. Isn't that interesting? With doctors, we've spent our entire professional training lives getting to the point of treating patients, and we don't want to. And they were mostly men. I'm not saying this to disqualify my entire gender. I'm just pointing out that these should be signs that trouble is looming. So you have two options at this point. Either you carry on down that path, hoping to make it to retirement before burnout actually kicks in, or you got to find some way of turning it around. I managed to get I'd probably consider myself quite lucky actually in a lot of ways. I managed to get out from burnout, and here's the good news: you can do as well. Okay, it's not an inevitable one-way street. So what I would say is basically, while there are many different factors that get you towards burnout, and there are a lot of things that you can do to change that. Really, I would want to share with you three things that I noticed that made a big difference for me to basically escaping from burnout and being able to function as a doctor once again. So, step number one, get as far away from the perfectionist mindset as you possibly can, because it's not helping. You can't do everything perfect all the time. Perfectionism simply leads to procrastination, and stuff just doesn't get done. Never mind whether it gets done properly or not, it just doesn't get done at all. That's the opposite of what you want to achieve. Step number two, leading on really from step number one, delegate out. The stuff that you don't need to do, get other people to do it. Because I promise you, there's plenty of stuff that you're doing at the moment, and when you think back on your workday, you know to be true, there's plenty of stuff there that you don't need to be doing, okay? You need to let other people do it, so you can concentrate on your job. And step number three, accept the fact and relish the fact that there are going to be complaints, because it doesn't matter what you do, you're in a job, you're in a profession where you're dealing with people. So there's always someone's going to complain about you, and the more of a perfectionist you are, the more you're going to let yourself get affected by the fact that there are complaints about you, and you can do everything absolutely right, but you can still get dragged into complaints. Okay, so don't bother trying to avoid them. Accept it, relish it. Have your practice manager send off letters for the basic ones, because most of the little ones tend to be the same rubbish. You didn't give such and such drug, or you wouldn't give them a sick note, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, you can deal with those. The big complaints happen because you were too tired and you lost concentration because you weren't looking after yourself. So I hope that's very useful for you, and I'm going to cover some of those topics in more detail. But for now, thanks for listening. Stay resilient.